Hi, and thank you so much for joining me. My name is Jeff Oberl. I'm the Training and Development Manager for Cadden Community Management. This session is all about running effective board meetings, giving you best practices for running professional and productive association meetings. First things first, you should know and understand your responsibilities as board members as outlined in your bylaws. The bylaws are going to give you as a board guidance on how to run your organization. What does a board meeting look like? How often do you as a board meet? And what are your responsibilities as directors and officers for your community? As board members for your community, you are fiduciaries for your fellow homeowners. You're the elected members of the community to make decisions on behalf of the association. So when you're doing so, you have to set your personal interests aside. And when you're making decisions, vote for things that are in the best interest of the entire association. Now, hopefully, when you're voting on matters, those two things will align and this won't be an issue. But for any reason that your personal interest conflicts with what's best for the community, know as a fiduciary, as a board member representing your homeowners, you need to vote for what's best for your association. When you meet as a board, this is a business meeting. Associations are nonprofits, corporations within the state of Arizona. And you, as board members, are directors of a corporation. Your meetings are the only times that you can meet, discuss, and vote on matters for the association. There should be some community aspect, some social aspect to it because you all are neighbors and you are a community. However, always remember that this is your only opportunity to meet as a board and make decisions. So there should be a business aspect and feeling to the meeting as well. Now, it is a business meeting, like I just said. So we want to make sure that we're setting the tone for that right off the bat, whether you're meeting in person or online. Now, if you're meeting online, you want to be sure that you're set up for success. Be sure that you are making sure that your equipment works, your cameras work, your microphone works, that your internet connection is strong so that you can participate fully. Be sure that you're in a room that maybe has reduced distractions so that you can be fully engaged during the whole meeting. If you're meeting in person, make sure you're setting the room up for success as well. Be sure you have enough room for everybody, that you have enough seats so everyone can be comfortable, and be sure that you're setting the room up for a board meeting and not necessarily like an annual meeting. Those are very different types of meetings. Annual meetings are more of a presentation where you're recapping what happened over the year and providing election results to the members that joined you. So we often see those meetings set up as more of a presentation style where you have a head table where all the board members sit at this table and look to everybody in the association, maybe in rows of chairs for homeowners to view what's going on. Now, for a board meeting, I suggest that you set the room up a little bit differently. Try setting the room up with one big table in the center of the room with chairs all around it so that you as board members can sit around one table and really engage in conversation with each other. Again, this is your time to discuss issues and make decisions for your association. It's very difficult to have a meaningful discussion when you're shouting down the row of maybe of a presentation style table to someone 7 chairs away from you. It's much easier to have that conversation around one big table. Now, you should also have room for homeowners that are there to observe and participate at the meeting as well, whether that's at the table or maybe in chairs around the room so they can hear and participate when it's their turn. Know and be aware of laws that are going to affect you. Now, in Arizona, we have 2 sets of laws that are going to impact associations. We have the Planned Communities Act, and we also have the Condominium Act. Now, we also need to make sure that we're aware of the Nonprofit Corporation Act, because again, you are nonprofit corporations. Your manager will guide you in those different areas when something is going to impact you as a board. Implement a residence time, or maybe it's referred to on your agendas as a homeowner input or maybe an open forum session. Now, when you have these on your agenda, you are able to set parameters as to what the expectations are for the homeowners to participate in these areas. We recommend that if you have this on your agenda, that perhaps you consider putting some time limits to homeowners for their participation. Maybe you want to give homeowners 2 minutes to address the board of directors on any topic that they wish before you move on to the next person. Now, you aren't necessarily required to have this on your agenda. Unless your bylaws or your governing documents require you to have a homeowner input period on your agenda specifically, you're not required by law to have this as a standalone agenda item. You are required to solicit input from homeowners before you vote on something, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but not necessarily an open forum platform for homeowners to address the association board on any topics they wish. We do think it's best practice that you have this on your agenda so homeowners have the opportunity to provide their feedback or input to the association for consideration at a future meeting, perhaps, or maybe to follow up with them outside of a meeting. Now, don't get trapped or think that you're required to answer questions or address issues right there and then during a homeowner input period. We really encourage you not to. We really recommend that you thank that homeowner for their input and we move on to the next person. Now, you may consider that item at a future board meeting, or you may follow up with them outside of a meeting to answer their question or maybe get some more information from them, but don't feel obligated to answer or engage right there at the meeting. Again, this is your business meeting, and you should really only address items that are on your agenda for that session. Be respectful of each other's time. Start on time. All right, first and foremost, if your board meeting is going to start at 6 o'clock, be sure that you're ready to start at 6 o'clock. Whether that's being there in person, getting the room set up in advance so that you can begin right on time, or maybe signing in online a little bit early so we can test equipment, make sure everybody's microphones are working so that we can begin right when we're supposed to. Sometimes it's good to set goals for the duration of your meeting as well. If you look at your agenda and you think, well, I think we can accomplish all of these things within 1 hour, that's in the back of everyone's mind so that we can work to achieve that goal. And if we start to linger on a topic, maybe it encourages people to move that subject along a little bit more timely. All right, consider a timed agenda. Now, if you have an association where board meetings run on, and before you know it, you have 2, maybe 3-hour board meetings, I would consider trying a timed agenda. And what that means is you're going to have your standard agenda like you would normally have, where you're going to call the meeting to order, you're going to conduct all these different items of business. But you're going to put an expected duration for each item on your agenda. Perhaps you say you're going to call the meeting to order. The first item of business may be approval of the minutes of your last meeting, and you anticipate that should take 2 minutes. Put 2 minutes right next to it, so that if you go beyond that, we can call attention to it and say we need to keep moving. All right, maybe it's the treasurer's report and approval of financials, 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, depending on what your financials are like in your community. But if you have that right there on the agenda, it keeps everybody focused on that and should keep you on track and moving forward through your association meeting. Now, use a preparation strategy. Now, what does that mean? We are going to provide you with information in advance of your board meeting so that we are prepared to take action at your meeting. Your board meeting should be just that. It's a time for you to make decisions and take action, not necessarily to start fact finding and really having these initial discussions on topics. We should be ready to move items forward. Okay, we should be receiving your board information packets in advance of the meeting so that you have time to review it in advance. I know that you're all volunteers and we all have busy lives, and sometimes it may be the first time you've seen that board packet at that board meeting. But try to make a habit of looking at it beforehand so that you're ready to vote on items right there and then. Always have an agenda and be familiar with what's on the agenda. That agenda needs to be published in advance of your meeting. It has to have 48 hours notice for all of your homeowners to be able to view that agenda to determine if they're going to join you for that meeting or not. Because you as a board can only discuss and take action on items that are on that agenda for that evening. If you are looking at your board packet before the meeting and you have questions on something, make sure you reach out to your manager or maybe reach out to the committee chair for that particular topic and ask those questions before you get to the meeting. Again, with the goal in mind of being able to take action at the meeting and not necessarily have that fact-finding expedition right there and then. All right, you should have some order to your board meeting, but I would say don't get too tied up in Robert's Rules of Order. If you've ever read the book or seen the book of Robert's Rules, there's a lot to it and it can be very complicated. However, we should have some sort of process for how you're going to make these decisions at a meeting. And what that looks like for us is when you have a new agenda item, before you have any sort of discussion on that agenda item, you should begin with a motion from one of your board members. That motion should then be seconded by another board member, and then you can discuss that particular motion and agenda item. So for instance, to get this started, we may have a new business item for maybe a new landscape contract. So you're the president, let's say in this scenario, you're going to say, okay, we're on new business item number 1, landscape contracts. Do I have a motion on the table? All right, I have one board member that says, yes, I make a motion that we change landscape companies and accept the bid from ABC Landscaping. Okay, President, great, thank you so much. Is there a second to that motion? Another board member will second that motion to further the discussion. Okay, just because you second that motion, or even just because you make the motion, doesn't necessarily mean you support it. You're getting the discussion started. Okay, we're going to vote on that later. Now, it's been motioned, it's been seconded. You as a board now get to discuss that topic and that motion. Once you as a board have finished your discussion, then you're going to open that topic up to any of the homeowners at that meeting to provide input on that motion. Not on anything they want, but they have to speak to that motion. Now, this is required by state law to gather that input from homeowners at that meeting before you vote on anything at that meeting. So again, board motion, board second, board discussion, then we're going to solicit homeowner input, and then you as a board can vote on that particular motion. Now, again, just like we had in the open forum or the homeowner input period, don't feel like you need to engage in the conversation in that homeowner input period. That's for you to hear their feedback on the motion, thank them for their input, see if there's anyone else that has a comment or input to provide, thank them for their input, and then call for your vote. Now, the chair should always act as a facilitator for your board meeting. You shouldn't necessarily act as kind of the ruler of that meeting. You want to stick to the agenda topic at hand. All right, be sure that that agenda topic doesn't kind of veer off into something else that really wasn't intended. All right, and that can happen very easily, as I'm sure you have all seen before. Perhaps we're talking about that landscape contract that was proposed, and part of your discussion period is, well, you know, I haven't seen the landscapers in the pool area for the last 2 months. Come to think of it, the pool water has been really dirty for those last 2 months. I don't think the pool vendor's been there either. And then we start talking about the pool contract rather than the landscape contract that's been motioned. So as the president or whoever is chairing that meeting, be aware of that. Steer the conversation back to where it should be. Perhaps note that you need to talk about the pool contract later, but get the conversation back on track. Again, speaking to that motion at hand. Now, as the chair of a meeting, especially if you're in in-person meetings, it's a lot easier to read body language. You know, perhaps you see one of your fellow board members has something to say, but maybe they're not speaking up. Solicit that input from them. Say, you know what, it looks like maybe you have something to share. Would you like to speak to the motion at hand? Be aware of time. Now, be aware of time in general. You know, what time is it? Are we running late on our agenda? Be aware of how much time you're spending on any particular agenda topic. It's okay to pause conversation and maybe even table a topic that is, you know, taking too much time. You can table something to a future meeting. You can table something to the end of your meeting if you have enough time to, continue that conversation then. Perhaps you need to table the item because you need more information. That's okay. So you know what? I think we need to get more information, get some more feedback from the vendors that gave us these proposals. Let's table this to our next board meeting. That's okay. All right. Now maintain civility. Now, I know that kind of sounds like common sense, and you may wonder if you're new to the board, well, why is that even brought up? There are going to be occasions where you don't all see eye to eye. You're all there for the same reason. You're all there for your association. However, you may all have different ways to achieve the goals, right? And sometimes those conversations can get a little bit heated. So if you ever find yourself in that situation, please maintain that civility. All right. It's not necessarily always the chair that needs to chime in. Maybe there's another board member that needs to step in and say, you know what? Hey, let's calm down a little bit here. Let's remember that we're all here as board members. We're all here for our community. Maybe let's kind of reframe that discussion so that we can move forward for a successful conclusion to that agenda topic. Now, avoiding abstaining from a vote. You are one of the elected few that get to make decisions for your association. Please use your vote. In most cases, we have 5 members on boards. You're one of 5 people that get to vote on any particular item that comes before the board. So please don't abstain from a vote just because maybe something's uncomfortable. You are going to be asked to vote on things that perhaps you never thought in a million years that you would have to vote on as an association board member. There are instances where you may be asked to vote on fines for a neighbor, perhaps collections actions for one of your fellow neighbors as well. Those are uncomfortable decisions to make. However, as a board member, it is your duty to vote on those items. Now, there is a difference between abstaining and from recusing yourself from a vote. Now, if you ever have a conflict of interest in a particular motion or topic on your agenda, you must disclose that conflict of interest. So if we use that landscape example, let's say you're part owner of ABC Landscaping. You must disclose that to the association at that meeting. Say, okay, before we have discussion, I must disclose that I am part owner of ABC Landscaping. Therefore, I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion and this vote. Okay? You are not required to recuse yourself from the vote. We recommend it. We think it's best practice to do so. You are required to disclose that conflict. Okay, so again, there is a difference between abstaining and recusing. Please use your vote if you're on the board. All right, the meeting is over. What do we do? All right, I like to recommend that as a board, we kind of recap what happened. It doesn't have to take very long. We're just going to recap what decisions were made and perhaps who's going to carry out what actions before your next board meeting. That way we don't lose momentum. We don't lose focus from one meeting to the next. We're going to maybe schedule the next board meeting. If you don't have a reoccurring schedule already set, make sure that you're checking calendars and be sure that you can all meet again in the near future. Thank each other for showing up. Thank each other for participating in that board meeting, whether it's fellow board members, homeowners that maybe joined you, or maybe even vendors that came to give you a presentation. You took time out of your day or out of your evening to participate for your association. Don't let that be lost. And then pack up and head home. All right, whether that's an online meeting or an in-person meeting. That's a little bit easier to pack up and sign off if you're an online meeting. However, if you're in person and you've been to a board meeting before, you've probably seen this. We adjourn the meeting, and as you're packing up, before you know it, you're maybe rehashing the topic or maybe even the entire agenda with somebody that's there at the meeting that maybe didn't chime in when it was their time to do so at the meeting. And before you know it, you're having a second or maybe even third discussion on a topic. Don't get caught up in that. Okay, you're volunteers. Your time's valuable. All right, you've had your business meeting. Everyone has had their opportunity to participate. Pack up and head home. I want to thank you so much for attending this session and reviewing information about having an effective board meeting. If you think of any sort of questions about this session or about board meetings in general, please feel free to reach out to your manager, or you can reach out to me directly. We're here to help and serve you and your association. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me. Thank you for your partnership with Cadden Community Management. We'll see you soon.